The Wedding, self-titled album, came out in 2004. I originally heard of The Wedding from an old Christian radio website called christianrock.net, and they had their single Wake the Regiment. That was the only song I knew by The Wedding. I didn't really know anything about the band back then. Honestly, I was still kind of forming my musical base when I first heard of The Wedding. And it wasn't until someone who I was friends with gave me his copy of The Wedding self-titled album, that I ever actually listened to the full album as a whole. He didn't like it because he thought it was too emo. I had not really listened to a lot of pop punk at the time. 2004. I would have been familiar with a little bit of Relient K, but I was still forming a lot of my musical opinions, and I was trying to get sort of a taste for what I liked. And that was when I heard this album for the first time, which, I don't know if you can see this, but it's actually signed by somebody. Anyway, I fell in love with the album right away. I thought it was really cool, and the only pop punk I'd really been hearing at that time. I eventually became a huge fan of pop punk as a genre, and for better or for worse. But the thing that I loved most about The Wedding when I first heard them was that it wasn't just pop punk like Anatomy or Two Lefts. It was a little bit harder and a little bit louder. Eventually, a term that I would use to describe The Wedding is rowdy rock, because I didn't really know a way to describe what they were doing that was different than the other rock that I was hearing at the time. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. So with this first album, the thing that I loved was that it was kind of a mixture between what was like emo and what people call pop punk. Like, it was a kind of hybrid combination of those two genres, because the vocals were these high, and there was like songs about death. You have Life Is But a Breath. You have Move This City. You have Water Under the Bridge, which like very, very loosely evoke like a little bit more of like an MCR, My Chemical Romance vibe, but it was still happier and more positive than that. So what you ended up with was a bunch of young guys who were essentially their youth group church band making music that was, using the word darker is a weird word, but like a little bit of a darker sound than when you think of instead of a praise band. And they were mixing a little bit of emo and a little bit of pop punk with a little bit of something that I've never been able to quantify. But it's something that, having been to Northwest Arkansas, where these bands are from, and eventually they have the Diamond of the South song, I love to visit places that inspire the music that I love. And when you visit there, you get to see the weather, see the scenery, and kind of get a feel for what they're doing. So what The Wedding brought was this weird southern, not country, but like, these people have strong accents. They're country type people. They're from the South, and they were bringing this weird element to these genres that were familiar, that was hard to place. And you can hear it in some of the riffs on the songs, even on this self-titled EP. Eventually you get a lot more of that flavor later on, especially when the new vocalist came in. But even on this first album, you get a hint of that. Nothing that they're doing musically is incredibly, like, spectacular, but it all fits together in a really weird and interesting package that helped it stand out apart from the stuff that was coming out. It definitely was different than the secular pop punk that was coming out, which, for better or for worse, Tom DeLonge kind of eventually said, hey, I was trying to write nursery rhymes to rock music. That's where the melodies kind of came from, with the fast instrumentals and loud instrumentals.
There was a sound that I wanted to go for that was nursery rhymes on steroids. Loud and fast, but they're nursery rhymes.
But this was a little bit more than that. It was trying to do more than that. There were songs about friends dying, songs about breakups, and songs about God in a way that there's different ways you could take it. It definitely could come across as a little bit cheesy or corny, but something that you get in young bands that it's hard to quantify. So something that's really hard for bands that get older to capture is a sense of earnestness in unfamiliar territory. Like, think pretty much any pop punk band's first and second albums when they're super angsty but super energetic and out there to do stuff. This band, when they sing songs like Song for the Broken, it's so encouraging and so energetic and so earnest in a way that is just really cool and really neat and honestly really encouraging, and it's a super fun song even to this day. Follow your hearts and you will find it on your own, and it'll all become clear by the time we make it home, and it'll always remember. You have songs like the first track on the album is called Morning Air, and it is a breakup song, kind of a little bit mean-spirited, which some people brought out back in the day, but it sounds like kind of happy, but it's really just this really mean song about like, hey, see you later, I don't want to think about you, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Really fun, if not a little bit pushy. And just overall, the album is thematically about young people, hyped up, optimistic, still talking about difficult situations, but really solid out of the gate. I really like this as a debut album. For me, and it's really hard for me not to read what it did for me historically into this, but I say it's a 4-star album, man. I just really feel like it's still 4 stars. Going by the standard of 4 stars is excellent to this day. That's probably what I'd give this first go. So that's The Wedding, self-titled.